Okay, so we'll pick up at the very bottom of 34a. And yesterday we saw that there was a dispute about how high was the water. So when the Jordan River split, the water, instead of flowing down the riverbed, it kind of flowed upward into a pillar while the people were crossing. So there was a dispute. Like one view was, well, how long did it take the people to cross? That's how long the water would have flowed up, and we can measure it in terms of distance, because if the camp measured 12 by 12 mil, if they traveled as they camped in kind of a square formation, then it took the time that a person could walk that 12 mil, that's how long the water flowed upwards. And if we assume that it's the same rate of the same speed that the water and the people go, so just like 12 mil of people cross the river, there would be 12 mil of water flowing up. But some of those assumptions were questioned. So we're going to go a little deeper into that. So we have a disagreement between Rami and Rabbi Huda, who says that whose idea this 12 mil was. And I should mention that others say that water flows faster than people, so it would have gone much higher than 12 mil. If water flows twice as fast as people walk, then it would have gone 24 mil. And we ended up with something like there was a 300 mil calculation. Okay, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that it was a 12 mil height. So that means that, they crossed in that square formation I mentioned, because that's 12 mil square, 12 mil long. But according to Rabbi Elazar, no, the reason that Rabbi Elazar says the water went higher than 12 mil is that the people were the march was more than 12 mil, because they didn't go in a square formation. They went one camp after another. So I guess it would have been like 6 times, no, 4 times longer. It depends what he means. If it's like each tribe went separately, or each block of 3 tribes went separately. But another view of the disagreement is everybody thinks that they went in the square formation. One holds that people walk faster than or as fast as the water, so the distance would be the same for the people on the water. But others says no, the water is faster, so it would have gone higher than 12 minutes. Okay, moving on. Shlach HaNashim. We're going to investigate the spies that Moshe sent from the desert to the land of Canaan. Amar Shlakish says, Shlach HaMidata. When God says to Moshe, "You send," he means it was your idea, your Moshe's idea. But how could that be that a bad thing came out of this, where Moshe follows God's command, like God said, go ahead and send. So, in other words, if God had commanded it, then it couldn't have possibly have come to no good. So it must have been Moshe's idea. It's when Moshe recounts in the Sefer Devarim, when he recounts the story of the spies, he says, "I thought it was a good idea." Moshe says, he means, I thought it was a good idea, not that God thought it was a good idea. So it was my fault, basically. That turned out to be a bad idea after all, but it was my idea to begin with, says Moshe. So they're going to spy out the land. From the beginning, they wanted to speak ill of the land of Israel, because in the setup it says they will spy out the land. There's a verse in Yeshayahu saying that where this word chafra means being ashamed, right? The moon will be ashamed and the sun will be will be ashamed. So that word the chafra, which is related the same root as the yach peru, they will spy out. It means you're going to spy out. You're going to find out the bad things, the shame of something. The Elishmosam, and who are the people that went? Lamati Ruven Shimon ben Zakur. It names all the people who went, who were the spies. Or Yitzchak. Devers Amasoros be a Deinu Miamosenu. Meragli Moshe Masem Mikru. We have a tradition that these names, their names indicate something about what they did. The other will also be Adenu El Achad, but we only have one of these traditions left. There were 12 spies, but we only know the drasha of what the name signifies for one of them. And who is that? Sisur ben Michael. Sisur Shasasar Masav Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu. He's called Sisur because he denied Listoros to deny something. He denied God's deeds. And Ben Michael, the son of Michael Shasa Atzmo Mach. He portrayed God as Mach, as weak or poor. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Afan and Omar. We can also, we can also say other drashas about some of the other names. Nachbi ben Vafsi, for example, Nachbi ben Vafsi was one of the spies. Nachbi shehachbi dvar shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. Nachbi is like the word to hide. He hid the words of God. In other words, he kind of, God says this is a good land, and he tried to cover that up. And Vafsi, the son of Vafsi, shepifsa al midos shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, stepped on God's attributes, as it were. Okay, so the spies came up in the south, and he came to Hebron. So it mixes. The first verb is in plural, and the second one, Vayavo and Hebron, he came to Hebron, is in singular. So it's inconsistent. Vayavo mi violation. It said they came to Hebron. Rav answered, no, there's only one of them who came to Hebron. It was Kalev, who peeled off from the other spies, and he alone went to Hebron. He went to visit the graves of the ancestors at the Maras Machpelah. Amarlan, he said, Avosa, my ancestors, Bakshul Irachamim, pray for mercy for me, and not only Asas Meraglim, that I don't get caught up in the plan of the Meraglim, of the other spies. Yehoshua, well, what about Yehoshua? Like, he was also the good guy, right? How come he didn't go with Kalev to Hebron? Kvar Bikish Moshe Avrachim. He didn't need more prayers. Moshe already prayed for him not to get wrapped up in the plot of the spies. Shenamar, Moshe added the name. His name was originally Hoshea, and Moshe called him Yehoshua. He added the Yud to say Yah Yoshia Chamiasas Meraglim. The Yud is a signifier for God. May God save you from the plot of the spies. So he was already said, he'd already been prayed for, but Kalev felt like God was looking after him, so he had to go to Hebron to pray. I didn't deceive. We have the Kalev Ekav and so this idea that Kalev peeled off on his own, when in the aftermath of the spies, when God announces the punishment, he said, but my servant Kalev, who had a different spirit. So in other words, he had gone off on his own. And therefore he's spared from the fate of the Meraglim. Okay, so there they encountered Shamachim Shesha the Talmai Yulida Adak. The spies found these four giants named Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai. Three giants. Achiman, why are these names? Achiman Miyuman Shabachad. He was the most significant of his brothers. He was like the leader. Sheshai was called Sheshai Shemei Simas Aretz Kishchasas. He left these huge pits when he walked as his footsteps. And Talmai, why was he called Talmai Shemei Simas Aretz Tlamim Tlamim? He left furrows when he walked in the ground. So they were such huge people that, you can all imagine in fairy tales, like the Jack and the Beanstalk kind of giant. Another interpretation. Achiman bana Anas. Achiman, he built the city of Anas. Sheshai bana Alush. These are kind of similar sounding names. These places. So they're attributing. The Gemara is attributing the founding of these cities to these three giants named Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, Bana Talbush, wherever these places are. Yilidei Hanak, why are they called the children of the giant? Shemanikim Chama B'Kamasan, because why the word Anak, which apparently means giant, but how does it come to mean giant? So the Gemara says because they make the sun into a necklace because of their great heights. In other words, because you look up at the sun and all of a sudden you see this giant standing up there. It looks like he's wearing the sun around his neck, as it were. But Hebron Sheva Shanim Nivnasa, and the end of that verse states that Hebron was built 7 years before Tzoan in Egypt. My Nivnasa, what does it mean it was built? If you want to say that Hebron was really built before Tzoan, that doesn't make sense because Hebron is in the territory of Shem, the younger brother of the younger brother of Noach, the youngest son of Noach. I mean, Noach had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Mitzrayim, Egypt, is in the territory of Ham, who is older than Shem, in whose territory Hebron was. So, like, it doesn't make sense that Noach would have built the city of Hebron for his younger son before someone his older son. How do I know that Mitzrayim, Egypt, is from Ham? Because it says in the genealogy after Noach, the sons of Ham were Cush and Mitzrayim, etc. Cush and Mitzrayim were food of Canaan. Sorry, it's not Shem and Ham. My mistake. They're both mentioned as sons of Ham, Mitzrayim and Canaan. Shem is the ancestor of Abraham. So, sorry, put that aside. But at the time, the territories were controlled by Mitzrayim and Canaan, and Mitzrayim is mentioned first in the genealogy, so it must have been older than Canaan. So how come Hebron was built before Tzoan? Doesn't mean that it was built 7 years before it. So it means it's seven times more fertile than so on. It's a better piece of land, basically. And by the way, if you look at the land of Israel, Hebron is in the worst agricultural area. It's very rocky. And that's why it's used as a burial ground, right? Because you wouldn't establish a cemetery on your best agricultural land. You're going to use it on land that's not useful for something else. So the Hebron land is among the poorer land of the land of Israel. And Egypt is a much more fertile land than Canaan in Israel, right? It's referred to as the Garden of God, in the land of Egypt. And it's fertilized by the Nile. It doesn't have it has irrigation. It doesn't rely on rain, so it's always fertile. And the best part of Egypt is in Tzoan. Because in Yeshayahu, when the king, I can't remember which king, but the king of Israel sent emissaries to the ministers of Egypt, they went to Tzoan. It's like the Herzliya Pituach of today, right? That's where the best houses are, right? That's the nicest neighborhood is where the senior politicians live. So Tzoan is the best of Mitzrayim, and Hebron, which is the worst of the land of Israel, is 7 times more fertile than Tzoan. Okay. So the Gemara questions this. Hebron, really, you think Hebron is a rocky place and not a good agricultural land? It's written by when Absalom told his father, I'm going back to Hebron to make sacrifices to God. He went to get sheep from Hebron. Why do you go to Hebron? The Brisa that says the best rams come from Moab, the best sheep come from Hebron. So must be there's good pasture land there if the best sheep come from there. So what's this idea that it's not good agricultural land? So says, me no, that's exactly what I'm saying. I did the klisha because it doesn't have such great soil for growing crops. Algaraya, so therefore grass grows there. The shaman kinyana, and so the sheep have what to eat, right? So the fact that sheep can graze somewhere doesn't make it good agricultural land. On the contrary, since it's not being used for agriculture, grass grows there for the sheep. So that's why there's good sheep there. And so we're sticking with the question that, or we are back to the idea that Hebron is not great agricultural land, and it's 7 times better than Egypt's best. Okay, so they come back from the 40 days. The spies come back after 40 days. Excuse me. They came back to Moshe and Aaron and the people. Yochanan said, "Mabia be'etzara, af halicha be'etzara." It links Vayelcha Vayovo. They went and they came back. With the same thing in mind, that they were gonna badmouth the land of Israel. So they told him, Banu, we came to the land and we found milk and honey, etc. However, the people there are very strong. If you're telling gossip that doesn't have some kernel of truth, nobody's going to believe it, right? So that's why they started out with saying, "Oh, great fruit in this land," but the people are too strong. So if they had like completely spun a tale that was without foundation, nobody would believe them. So Kalev silences them. Everyone. Amar Rabba Shehsisam Bidvarim. He kind of drew them in with words. Pasach Yeshua de Kamishtai. He saw that when Yeshua started speaking, Amrle, they said, Dain Rosh Ketia Yamalel. So this one with the cut off head speak. So why he's referred to as a cut off head? Some say it's because he had no children or whatever, but they insulted him and they didn't want to listen to Yeshua. So Amar, so Kalev says to himself, if I start, if I do the same as Yeshua and start opposing the spies in my speech, Amre be milsa v'chasminli, they're going to insult me too. And shut me up. So he said, is this the only thing that Moses did to us? So Savre, but good news, they thought they're going to hear more dirt about Moshe, right? So they were quiet to listen. He says, so then he continues, you know what else Moshe did for us? He took us out of Egypt, Karvan, split the sea, like if he told us to climb ladders into the sky, would we listen to him? So we can do it. We follow Moshe, we can do it. So he was able to get his words in that way. And I refer you, for a riff on this, I refer you to the Monty Python's Life of Brian, and what have the Romans ever done for us? So the other spies said to him, "No, we can't do it. We won't win if we try to fight these people." They said a great, like a really awful thing. When they said, he is stronger than us. It is stronger than us. They didn't mean us. Ella mimenu. Meaning God. Like what they're implying is that the people there are stronger than God. They're like saying that even the owner of the land won't be able to get his own stuff out of his house. In other words, God will be impotent in fighting the Canaanites. And they said it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. Darash Rabbah. God said, they saw people, people dying there, and I meant it for good. I meant it for good. They saw it bad. What does this mean? I thought it was. I intended it for good. Wherever the spies went, there was an important personality had just died, and they were mourning or burying him. And why did I do that? Didn't introduce, so that people would be um, preoccupied with the burial of that person, and they wouldn't notice that there are these strangers here. Well, who cares? Like we got bigger fish to fry right now. Vika Damreya, some say Eov Nachnafshe, that it was Eov who died. All the best not everybody was busy with his eulogizing and so on. And so, so they didn't pay much attention to these spies. So that's why all these people were dying when they were there. But hey, but they assumed it was a bad thing that people were dying. They thought, oh, look at all the, there's a lot of dying going on here. Not such a great land. But he and they said we felt like grasshoppers because they were such big people, and they also saw us as grasshoppers. Amar of Misharshia, Raglim Shakari, how they're lying. So they can say we felt like grasshoppers. That's how they felt. But fine. How did they know that the people that the local residents saw them, perceived them as just like grasshoppers? How did they know that? Avalohi, but Gemara says no. This isn't a good. This isn't a good deduction. Kihavu mavre avele. So when they were having their post-funeral meal, they're having the morning ceremonies for these people who died. Tute arze havu mavre. They would serve it under the trees. And when the spies saw them coming to have their picnic under the trees, salku yasei bilani, they would climb up the trees so they wouldn't be seen. And then they overheard them saying, I think I saw something that looked like people up in the trees. So that's how they knew. They actually overheard the and referring to them as people that look like grasshoppers, the size of grasshoppers. So that's how. So it's so they did know what the people thought because they overheard them talking. Okay. So everybody cries at the news of the miracle. That was the night of Tisha B'Av. You're crying for nothing. And I'll give you something to cry about on this day. And that's how Tisha B'Av came to be the kind of national day of mourning and terrible things happening to Jewish people. So the people wanted to stone Yehoshua and Caleb. And the glory of God appeared at the Ohel. It's like they were stoning not only Yehoshua and Caleb, but they were throwing stones up in the air, as it were, trying to stone God. So the 10 spies died in the plague. It was an unusual death, or a particular, I think it means a particularly harsh death. Amar Rabchinu Bar Papa Darash Rabbi Shila Ish Kar Tamarta. Rabbi says the name of this Rabbi Shila. Lamed Shenishtarve L'Shonam V'Nafal Tiburim. How did they die? Their tongues stretched out as far as their navel. And like maggots would come out of their tongues and into their navel, and vice versa. So that sounds like a pretty nasty way to die. Or no, they died of this disease mentioned in various other places in the Gemara called askara, which has, I don't know, it's identified by some as diphtheria or whatever. It's some kind of nasty way to die. Okay, now we're going back to the crossing of the Jordan. We've digressed into the spies, and now we're back to the Jordan. So they come out of the Jordan River. The water rushes back into place. When the Kohanim came out of the Jordan, the soles of their feet came out of the water and onto the dry land. And the waters returned to the riverbed and flowed along its banks like it had always done. So as I mentioned, when we started this thing, the assumption is, that the Kohanim stepped with the ark, stepped into the Jordan on the east side of the Jordan, of the river, and then when everybody had crossed, they stepped out again, which the Gemara understands means they stepped out on the same side that they started, on the east side. So now everybody else has crossed to the west side, and the Kohanim and the ark are still on the east side. So Aaron and Nosov Kohanim so they're on opposite sides of the bank. So how did they reunite? Nosa Aaron is Nosa V'Yavar. So what happened is the ark itself carried the Kohanim over the waters of the Jordan, and they were reunited with the people. As it says, when people had finished crossing, then the ark passed. Now, an easier way to understand this, or a less miraculous way, is that that the Kohanim followed the people to the other side, to the west bank and the west side of the Jordan, and then they stepped out. But the Gemara prefers to see it as a more miraculous type of event. On this idea that the ark carries those who are carrying it, who appear to be carrying it. This is why Uzzah was punished. So the story of Uzzah, when King David repatriated the ark, or to from the Philistines, or was this? Or maybe this was Shlomo. Was Shlomo? I forget. But when they came back, brought the ark back to Jerusalem. From first it had been captured by the Philistines, and then it went to it was being carried to Jerusalem. So Vayavo Agor and Kidon, Vayishlach Uzzah Siado Lechos Es Haaron. So Uzzah, who was one of the priests accompanying the ark, apparently the cattle pulling the wagon that carried the ark stumbled, and it looked like the ark was going to fall. So Uzzah stretched out his hand to steady it, and he touched the ark. So God said to him, Uzzah, Nasa Asma Koshke, Uzzah, what are you so worried about? You don't touch the ark. The ark can take care of itself. And therefore he was killed on the spot. And God got angry, and he killed Uzzah right there, al hashal. What does shal mean? Shalu means because of his error. Shalu it refers to an error, Uzzah's error. Because of his error is why he was killed. One says no, that not that he touched it, but that he defecated before the ark, which is pretty strange. Like, why would like that? There's no indication of that in the text. But this is what I guess this is the idea, that Uzzah should be blameless for naturally trying to steady the ark when he saw it was about to fall. That doesn't seem to be worthy of capital punishment. So they're assuming that there was some other disrespect that he showed. Excuse me. So he died there before the ark. Uzzah will come to, will get his reward in the world to come. Shenamar im Aron ha'Elokim. It was with God's ark, ma'aron li'olam, just as the ark will always be. So the Gemara has elsewhere assumes that the ark was hidden and was not destroyed or lost in the destruction of the temple. So it's still around somewhere. And I refer you to Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark. So Uzzah too will endure forever. He gets his eternal reward in the world to come. So David was angry about this incident, that this what should have been a joyous procession turned into that Uzzah was killed in it. when it says Vayichar, which means he got angry, but Rabbi Lazar is doing a play on words. His face darkened like a burned biscuit, or biscuit on coals. Um, Elamiata Kalecha to see Vayichar Chanami. So I said, wait a minute, that's not what Vayichar means. So you're going to say that about every time it says Vayichar, which is many times. Like God gets angry and people get angry. Every time it means that their face darkened. No, it means they got angry. So Gemara says, now here it's different. Hasam ksiv af. Usually it says Vayichar af. That is an indication of anger. Here, Hachal ksiv af. Here it just says Vayichar l'David. So the idiom is Vayichar af. His literally. I don't know how I think it refers to like flaring of the nostrils, whatever. If it uses the word Vayichar af, that means anger. Here it just says Vayichar, so we can interpret it in a different way. Darash David. Rambam says, why was David punished? In other words, why was it on David's watch that Uzzah was killed? So, it's bad enough that Uzzah got punished, but why did it have to happen in David's great procession here? Obviously, it's something that Gemara just said he got angry or he was upset about. So why did this happen to David? Because he spoke of the words of Torah as songs. Your laws were, which is from Tehillim, your laws were like music to my ears. So that sounds like a nice thing, but God says, words of Torah about which it is written, close your eyes and it's gone. You're calling them songs. Like a song is something that once you've sung it, it's done. It might be the explanation here, but Torah is supposed to be like remain in your head and your heart. So I'm going to make you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to make you make this mistake, this elementary mistake that even school children know about. This is referring to the instructions of how the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and the ark and everything were to be moved in the desert during their travels. So the instructions to the family of Kahas who carried the ark were not to touch it, to carry it on poles on their shoulders. So everybody knows that you're not supposed to touch the ark. You're going to be tripped up by this elementary mistake. Everybody knows that you're supposed to carry it in a wagon. That you're supposed to carry it on your shoulders, as it says that Bakasef Yisov is supposed to, people of Kahas are supposed to carry the ark on their shoulders, and you put it in the wagon. I'll show you, why not a wagon, because this could happen. Okay, so going back a little bit in time, more ark stories. When the Philistines captured the ark, they brought it to their city Beit Shemesh, and many of them died because they looked at the ark. Really, you're not even allowed to look at it. Like you get death just for looking at the ark. So disagreement between these two. One says they would bow to the ark during their work. They're out there in the field, they're doing their work, and the ark passes by. They bow down, but they keep on working. They keep on harvesting. So not respectful. That's why they died. And the other ones, and another says that they also spoke disrespectfully. Man amre de imarait. Uman asa alach di pais. They said, who made you angry when you were angry, and who approached you now that you've been appeased. So they're saying to the ark, how come you got captured, basically? How come you couldn't save yourself? Some deity you are. So that was disrespectful, and that's why they died. Vayachbam shivim ish chamishim elef ish. And one second. So the plague killed 70 men and 50,000 men. So usually it would say 50,000 and 70. The conjunction and is missing here. So there's a dispute here. There were only 70 people that died in this plague, but each one was the equivalent of 50,000 ordinary people. And the other says that actually 50,000 were killed, and what's the reference to 70? Each one of them was as important as the whole 70 elders in the Sanhedrin. So in this procession, this is the following procession. 3 months after Uzzah died, David tries again to. They left the ark basically where it was I think it was in Kiryas Yarim, and then 3 months later they try again, and so every step of the way, or every 6 steps, they sacrifice an ox and a lamb. Shiva Parim Shiva Elim, but that's how it's written in Sefer Shmuel. But in Sefer Divrei Yamim, it's written Shiva Parim Shiva Elim, 7 bulls and 7 rams. So which one's it? Amar Papa Bar Shmuel. For every step they sacrificed an ox and a sheep. I'll call Sheish V'Sheish, and every 6 steps, Shiva Parim Shiva Elim. So it's both. It's like every step there was a lot of sacrifices going on here. Amar Le'Pisa says in Kenya Lesa, that means they had to have an altar at every step, right? Like you're saying, like the whole way was they kept building altars to do these sacrifices. That doesn't seem right. I'll call Sheish V'Sheish Psios Sharamuri. For every 6 steps there was an ox and a sheep. I'll call Shisha Sidorim Shel Sheish Psios. And every 36 steps, like every 6th time that they dig 6 steps, Shiva Parim Shiva 7 and 7. So there's still a heck of a lot of sacrificing going on, but he likes that solution better. Okay. Ksiv Kidon. They came to Kidon, where this incident occurred of Uzzah. Ksiv Nachon. Another. That's how it is in Divrei Yamim, but in Shmuel it's written they came to Nachon. So which place was it? Name changed. First it was called Kidon, and then it was called Nachon later. Okay, so again back to the Jordan River. So remember that we said that they took rocks, stones, or boulders from the riverbed with them. So there were 3 sets that they took. There were boulders that were set up on the east side of the Jordan in land of Moab. There's a whole chapter in Devarim of the whole sequence in Devarim where Moshe gives his valedictory address, and at the end of the Devarim it says, write what I just said, write my whole speech on these stones. So there was that was in Moab on the east side of the Jordan. Be'er. And so how do we know that this 1 second. Oh, sorry. The Kasafta land, the writing is referred to at Har Grizim and Har Eval. The blessings and curses that were delivered, those were explicitly written on stones. And since it uses the word Be'er in both cases, we extrapolates to Moshe's speech. It was also written on stones in Moab. So that's 2 sets. And there was boulders that were set up in the Jordan River. There were 12 stones that he put in the Jordan River. while it was split, obviously. And then one said that was in Gilgal. They took 12 stones from Jordan, brought them to Gilgal, and that's where they wrote the blessings and curses. Rabbi Stott, how did they write? He said, Hargreaves and Haribol. What did they write? Rabbi Yudomer al Gabi Avanim. They wrote it on the rock. And that Marva Chatafta al Avanim called Divrei Torah. That's right on the stones, all of these the words of this Torah. And then they plastered it over the writing, so that you couldn't see the writing anymore. How would anybody know what was written there? So sure, the Jewish people were at the revelation of Sinai, but what's the point of writing things on a rock and then plastering over it? Like, how's anybody supposed to read it? Well, he answered, God gave them this special insight. All the nations in the world sent emissaries, and they were able to remove the plaster and see the words of Torah written on the rock. And because of this, they were doomed. Because they had access to the Torah, right? They came, it's very kind of weird. Like, why was it plastered over? Maybe that preserved the letters until they preserved the writing until they could come and uncover it and read it. But the point is that they were able to come and read it, and they should have taken the words to heart, which is also strange, right? Because usually the idea is that the Torah was given to the Jewish people to keep, and here this is saying that everybody has access to the Torah, and they should keep the words of the Torah. So I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I mean, you think about the context of the Talmud in the early time of Christianity. They accept it in a sense, and obviously even today, right? The Bible is a foundational book, so everybody knows what's written in the Bible. Now, does that mean they're obligated to follow it? We don't take that position, but here it's kind of taking the position that if you're able to read the Bible, then you should pay attention and you should adopt its practices. It's pretty interesting. But this is not usually the position espoused by the Gemara. Rabbi Shimon says, no, you got it all wrong. First, they plastered the stones, and then they wrote on top of it. And they wrote at the bottom, they write at the bottom like, hello reader, this is so that you'll abandon your idolatrous practices. Read what's above. So you learn, that the other nations, if they had done tshuva, if they had rejected their idolatrous ways, they would be accepted. Rava said, "My Tama." Rabbi Shimon says that the plaster is first and then the writing. Nations will be burning the plaster. They will burn in hell, as it were, because of the plaster. In other words, because of what was written on the plaster, they had the opportunity to read the Torah, which was written over the plaster, and they didn't accept it. Rabbi Yehuda explained this. He says, no, it means that the people, the nations, are like plaster. The only way you can unplaster something is by the only way you can create plasters through burning, right? Apparently, you burn limestone to get I have no idea what the process is to make this kind of plaster, but it can only be produced through burning. What can you do with these kutim? The only thing you can do with them is burn them, just like they burn the limestone to make plaster. And we will stop here for today. we are all caught up, I'm happy to say, after yesterday's interrupted day. But we have another big daf tomorrow, so we'll see you then. Have a good day.